Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Bradley Valenaki. Everything in the world starts small, including business. The government has a dream and the Prime Minister wants to see Papua New Guinea become the richest Christian black nation in the world. Are we on track to achieve that? Well, it's difficult times here and also internationally for people engaging in commerce. We look at the government interventions and we hear of the experience from local companies in business, around the business environment at present. Mr. John Pora, who is the chairman of the SME Corporation, and also Mr. Steven Kilage, who is a local businessman. Gentlemen, thank you for coming onto the program.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so the discussions, first of all, the SME Corporation established by government. Your take on that?
Well, the SME Corporation is the government arm for all things SME in the country. Comes under the Trade and Commerce Ministry, and it's been active for quite some time now, on and off. And in more recent times, as of 2016, you would have seen the master plan policy released, and that the drive has been there for SME growth in the country, and I think it's gone through its natural evolution. We're at an interesting point now, particularly with a pandemic, which is not a scenario that you see too often. I think the last one being 100 or so years ago. So we're seeing the collapse of many moving parts of the economy. And the policies that we have in place now also have to adjust and adapt and evolve with where we are. The other element of it is the natural transition. We're going through a generational transition at the moment with many of our forefathers and the founders of the country now of age and passing on. So that transition there is a transition of knowledge and understanding of a time period that started the country and where we are today, and it's a good time to reflect on that. The transition of economics as well, if I remember correctly, by 1997 we were about a 2 billion economy. As of 2019, some of the reports I've read, we were up to 78 billion. So has the country grown? Yes. Has the structures grown with it? Yes. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. And I think we're at that point now. One of the challenges or every challenge, the crisis such as a pandemic or even an economic crisis, when it arrives, it gives you an opportunity to look at two things. One is the crisis at hand, and the crisis at hand will always be a reflection of the decisions yesterday and the performance of yesterday that is performing now in a crisis. Once you identify that, then it's the opportunities which come from the lessons that we're learning here and now. So there's no magic wand to fix, economy in this state. Particularly with the pandemic, none of us have really seen, what a pandemic does or have a reference point to it. So decisions have been made at a very fast pace. There's been a lot of uncertainty. There's been the collateral damage that comes with that sort of operation. And now, as we've had 2019, 2020 to go through 2021, we now have 2 years of a level of understanding of some of the decisions that we've made, the consequences of those decisions. And it's really about coming back together and saying, okay, from this point forward, where do we go? And what decisions do we need to make? So we're going to have to become different people in order to deliver a different result.
All right. So, Mr. Pora, the organization is established. In terms of your role, what do you play in terms of bridging the SMEs and government?
Well, if I can first say the board, the role is made up of the board and the management team, and right now we're bridging the relationship between the board and the management team to make it a robust engagement. From that, we then look at the actual legislation that governs our corporation. And as we look at the legislation, we are now looking at the alignments of activities, practices, and engagements and relationships and stakeholder agreements that actually align back to the legislation that we're duty-bound to deliver. And then the third element that's going to be assessed now is the actual execution element of it. So once we have law, then we have the order in which we're to be guided by the law, and then we look at the actual functionalities of it and how we integrate and how we work together. So the government-to-government relationship is essential for us as a corporation, because there are moving parts within the government that oversees the economy, customs, CIC, consumer protections, trade, foreign trade agreements, things like that. So the government-to-government relationship is critical. The government-to-business relationship is also one that is now going to be critical. And I think we'll probably touch a bit on that in where to from here at the end of these discussions. But they're the three elements that really are for our citizens to understand. In the government-to-citizen relationship, the primary opportunity that we have right now is to build the knowledge economy of the country, so that people have an understanding of where we've come from in the last 45 years. And we've lost talk time, you plant seed, the fruit them come up now. And if the fruit is sour or things like that, then you go back and you assess either the plant, whether you've pruned it enough, you've given it enough nutrients to the fruit, or you look at the soil and see the quality of nutrition coming in from that level. So we've got to do that on an economic level. And in terms of human engagement, the government to citizen pathways, we have to look at the influence of government to balance now. A lot of our influence in the last 45 years has been along the philosophy of to go to school, get an education for a job. 80% of our population after 45 years is still informal, which means that we have to actually address that the pathway for that is SME, whether it's on a micro level, a small to medium, and it's a progressive pathway. So a person who starts as a self-employed person has the opportunity in a pathway to become, a micro SME through formalities, and then an SME, and then hopefully continue to grow business to a point that they become a player and an economic owner in our country.
All right, interesting discussions there. We'll go for a short break and come back with more on the other side. This is Infocus. Welcome back, and we're still discussing SME in Papua New Guinea, and now to a local businessman, Steven Kilage, here in Papua New Guinea. Look, Mr. Kilage, when you went out and came up with the idea of starting your own business, what was going through your mind, and what were some of your expectations of the business environment and also government intervention?
Well, I initially, when I started, I knew the risks as any Papua New Guinean does, but at that time it was a good time when I started out. We just had the LNG, NA was in power, and there was a lot of money circulating in the economy. So it encouraged a lot of SMEs to start up. And that's why there was money flowing around in the economy, and I felt a bit confident in going out, leaving my comfort zone, my comfortable job, to get out there and have a punt, try to start my business. So it's been almost 20 years now. I've been doing business into real estate, security, and food and beverage, Red Rock. And the past 3 years, it's been quite difficult to the cash flows slowed down. A lot of SMEs, maybe like pay more wages, pay more tax. It's just we need someone in government who understands business, how to start a business. The problem is a lot of people in power right now haven't actually started a successful business. All come to public service, public servants straight will go, I don't want to say it, but all go come up all member of parliament. So if we had more business people in business-minded politicians, I think the policies they put out will actually help and encourage growth for SMEs, like Law Australia. Tamal put him COVID-19 restrictions law business. Government giving little help him law business. Or said man all off work for a month. Government and pay him wages blow. So this is the kind of things that we need to look at. We've got to encourage economic growth, and if we want to grow the economy, contracts all of a sudden must split even into the economy, not to themselves, which we all know happens. So it's something that needs to be. Plenty of minutes to todo Mr. Mouse Pass, but we need to speak up as citizens that money needs to be spread around. If we're building roads, maybe subcontractor, a lot of subcontractors around Port Moresby. We've got people from Wanigala who are great at doing stone walls. We've got people all around NCDC, small SMEs all around. They can do, drainages, footpath, all these kind of things. So if the government wants to encourage economic growth, I think they need to subcontract a lot of SMEs in Moresby and around the country. When they're giving out massive 200, 300 million contracts, it should be subdivided to local SMEs. And that's how we encourage the local economy and not give to one big company. And I think we all know what happens there.
Right. So, Mr. Pora, in Papua New Guinea, during the pandemic, the government has given support to the SME space to support businesses during this time.
The government made commitments to support the SME sector. Let me say also that the stimulus, or I won't call it the stimulus, the SME funding that they allocated to the banking systems to roll out was probably one of the first times we've seen at that level that a commitment was made verbally and it was followed through and actually manifested. The challenge, of course, now is that in the pandemic itself, the structures in which our SMEs are operating at predominantly in a free enterprise manner. So structurally, for us to be able to filter cash flows through can only be done by paying government bills. There's no monitoring and evaluation methodologies in place structurally that can actually connect directly at the speed it's required. And I think that's one of the critical things about the lessons that we're coming through now is that, number one, our data alignment isn't in order. So when we speak about SME development and we speak about the path of SME development over the last 45 years, we speak on a gut level. We don't speak about actual facts, and that's something that we have to address today going forward, is to ensure that our data is in order, because even in business, in SMEs and the whole process of developing economically, one of the economic disciplines is that your numbers tell you what to do. Yeah. They guide you in your decision processes, and I hope that as we work forward from this point forward in taking some of these lessons forward, is that we, in government, we create that environment, whether it's through stakeholder engagements, partnerships, bringing industries together. Like I said, the economy today is much bigger than it was before. We have multiple sectors of business models playing in the same field. What we'd like to do also is to say, okay, well, let's support our SMEs now, and this is a time period that we need to do it. The supply chain disruptions that we've seen right now across the whole economy gives us that breathing space now to say, okay, well, look, who in the market should we be supporting? And I think in the retail sector, you've seen some of that already occurring with the likes of CPL changing its supply chain systems to supporting local farmers. We need that to occur all round. Whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in logistics, whether it's in distribution, whether it's in manufacturing. We need to look at who's in our field of economics, who's in our garden. The country is our garden.
I think the government needs to take the lead in that. so long that SMEs and local business have been taking the front foot in trying to lead change, and governments are sitting there. I was just talking to Senator Borgen last week in Ley, and he's actually written a paper advising the government, and it's just gone into the toilet. And the government needs to listen to advice, needs to start waking up, because the economy is, it's quite evident. We've got riots all over the country. We've got people killing each other. People are on go long. Government need to step in, bring some economic, especially with the SMEs. We need a flat tax. We're getting pounded by RSC every month, and we haven't made, like for Red Rock, I haven't made income for the last 3 months. So how am I going to pay tax? These are the kind of questions the government needs to start, answering, and start really thinking about it.
All right. So, Mr. Kilage, you are talking from something really close to your chest and from your experience. We'll take a break now and come back on the other side with more of these discussions. Welcome back. This is Infocus. Now, before the break, we spoke about the business suggestions to government in terms of revenue making during this time, and also the policies that would really help the SMEs in Papua New Guinea.
I think just on the back of what Stephen was talking about there, one of the realities government needs to think through the process and understand and accept is that the SMEs actually, business owners don't just worry about themselves, they actually have their staff to worry about. They have their staff, their families, the staff's families. It's a ripple effect. They have taxation commitments, regulatory commitments and requirements. So if cash flow is going to slow down, if cash flow is going to be stopped, it's going to actually ripple right through the whole sector. And for government, it's also going to come back to us when it comes back to our revenue source, which is taxation. So we're all actually in this boat together. We're all in a synergy reality, a total network, where one affects the other, and we need to look at it in that context, because if we allow one to drop and think we're okay if they drop, it's not going to be like that, because eventually it'll come back around. When we can't collect in taxation revenues, which is one of the main sources of government revenues, then the government also starts to go down.
Yep.
And then in terms of choosing Papua New Guinean businesses, moving our supply chains locally as much as possible is to rebuild our domestic economy. Ensure that the cash circulation within there is fluid enough to sustain us continuously over a longer period of time. The wealth of the measure of wealth for any small business, any individual even, is how many days can you survive forward in terms of how much cash flow you have. So businesses have operating costs every month. They have to meet, just because we shut the economy down, or say we close your doors, doesn't mean that the power and electricity bills don't get called on. The bank deadlines don't get called on.
So, Mr. Kilage, we ran a story for you on news regarding your establishment at Red Rock.
Yep.
We're talking about diversifying business and adapting to the changes. Really, for a business that's selling alcohol, you cannot really change.
No, I can't. I mean, I laid off 10 of my staff for the past 6 or 7 weeks. We're going to be open this week because the restrictions have been lifted. But yeah, it's been tough for my staff. 10 of them, all Nogat Keke. Last week, I had to give them $50 each just to, feed their family. A lot of them live in the 6 Mile area. A lot of the ground staff, and then we've got 2 to 3 uni students who, do it as part-time. So it's really affected a lot of people. The lockdown, especially in Moresby, has affected a lot of people in the food and beverage industry and the hospitality industry. I know Cosmopolitan, we think pokies and these areas, but it's more than that. It's the security guards, the bouncers, the waitresses. Ogra got pigni, got school fees, and ogra bills no baim na. when they've been laid off for 2 months, government should step in and okay, step in with Cosmo or these F&B places and look, we'll pay half of your wages, you know, help you out.
Because at the end of the day, you're still paying tax.
We are paying tax, and I think we should focus taxation on beers, smoke, alcohol, and pokies, raise those revenues, and then I think we give less, maybe a flat tax to SMEs. I think that'll encourage, like give me an incentive to incentivize businesses to come and pay their tax. I think the PM started off, when he came in, he gave a waiver. You come in and pay a certain amount of tax and he'll waiver all your costs. Now the penalties are killing us SMEs. Penalty now. Every month or so an email comes, it's really killing us. They are doing a good job. We want to pay tax, but we need a break. Past 2 years, it's really been tough on local SMEs. A lot of people also, but Plani man almost past no. This is our PNG culture, even as to talk Plani. We just accept whatever the government does to us. But I think people need to be more vocal, speak to the local MPs, speak up. But you know, it's killing all of us.
All right. So coming out of the isolation and the various lockdowns and the restrictions, basically, what has your business learned in terms of the innovations that you have made to actually keep your business afloat?
I think my business, a lot of SMEs will learn to cut down a lot of excess spending, unnecessary spending. We've actually right-sized our operations, cut out all the unnecessary spending. That means some of the extra things that I should spend on contractors coming up and doing the place up, they've actually cut down. So economy's really slowed down, and my other companies too. Payments are coming. Used to come in the first 7 days. Payments are coming 14 to 15 days, even 20 days late. So for us to pay taxes on time, it's quite a problem with our NES fund payments also for our staff. Those are reoccurring problems, the leaves, salaries and tax wages, and all these things. SMEs, we're really struggling. The government really needs to look at it, than rather making pledges and statements that not weight blame.
All right. So the SME Corporation, going forward, what do we hope to see?
We're at a point, I think, for us to come out of this really well, and we have to come out of this really well. And when I say really well, what I mean is that Papua New Guineans must come out of this really well. And to do that, I think the stakeholder era that we're in right now of working together, realizing that this one economy is all of us. When we talk about the economy is the people. It's not just the corporations and the religions, it's actually the people. And they form all these entities. And we're going to need to come together and bind together, which means our communication strategies going forward are going to be very different. And at the corporation level, we're going through our one of our strategies, which we're working through now to roll out, is an integration strategy. How are we actually communicating with the various business sectors in the country? Because if we're not communicating well, then we're only going to be going by theory. And we shouldn't be making decisions purely by theory in the absence of data. We should be listening to actual business people. So that's going to be one of the critical things. How often are we communicating together? And then how often are we connecting players between players? And the narrative going forward also is that supporting Papua New Guinean businesses right now is going to see us through. Yep. In the tough times, as Stephen was saying, you cut back. You cut back on waste, you cut back on fat, you cut back on, all the expenses. And that's one of the lessons of streamlining budgets that all SMEs are going to go through. But you can't sustain that. You've got to see a road coming out, So the next step is start to reconnect everybody again, because at the end of the day, cash has to flow. And if we continue to see a lot of the cash flow of the country leaving the country, then our domestic circulation volumes of cash flow reduce. And it's a fight. Businesses fight against each other for the same kina. So what we have to do is to make sure that coming out of this pandemic now is to grow the pool of the domestic market circulation, support Papua New Guinean businesses, and business-to-business relationships, consumer-to-consumer relationships, things that we're seeing now emerging. They're not new things, but your consumer-to-consumer engagements on Facebook, for example, they're buying and selling of phones, and the regulatory areas of those have to be checked, because human behaviour and desperation is such that theft and sale of stolen goods will always occur in an environment like that. I think just fundamentally, to answer that question, or where to from here, communication is going to play an absolute critical role, and the integration of our communication, where we actually listen, and the government to citizen relationship is also critical, and the citizen to government relationship is critical. If you're forever throwing stones at your government in total disrespect, you've got to remember, and this is one of the things I'm saying, say to my team in the board, you respect the chair. I'm only here for a short period of time. Yeah. But the chair has the mandated duty of the legislation, and whoever sits in it has to actually perform to that. So that's what we're working on. Legislation, the organisation bodies, the economy, the players, all of that, and then the standard of performance that comes into order. And I think if we can do those three things correctly, then the relationship that we foster from here onwards must be much better than it was. It's no point collapsing like this and not walking away with a lesson and not walking away better for it.
All right. So great discussions there, gentlemen, on SME. Mr. John Pora, the chairman of the SME Corporation, and also Mr. Steven Kilage, local businessman here in Papua New Guinea. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time on the program.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Right, this has been In Focus. If you have comments on the program tonight, you can get in touch with us on the email now showing, or you can engage with us social on our Facebook and Twitter pages, or you can watch this program a little later on YouTube. Appreciate your company with us tonight. Stay safe. On behalf of the team, bye for now.